Hi viewers, and welcome to the channel, and welcome to the second part of the video where we're using a CAD program such as FreeCAD, creating a model and finishing it in Blender. So we're looking at creating a displacement map that textures the object, which will be available on the 3D print. So we're not talking about texturing, visual texturing, we're talking about physical texturing. So something like knurling or some kind of grip on there. And what will happen, we'll get something like this. So I've used a physical texture on here, and you can see this displacement has been added to the object, and we get this hexagon displacement going across here that we can 3D print to get this texture. In the previous video that I went through, we went through the basics where I didn't actually use FreeCAD, I just used Blender. In this one we'll be using both of them. I'm going to create this model from scratch, so you see me create that in there very quickly. We'll bring this out to Blender and then add this texture on here, which is just a JPEG texture, and then we'll be able to put this onto a 3D printer and have this texture on our finished model. So I hope you're enjoying these videos, and let's have a look how we would do this.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions.
So I'm in FreeCAD, I'm going to create a model. Now I'm going to be using the part workbench for this, and we're just using a basic model in here. I'm using a sphere, and I'm going to create something out of this so we can actually texture it in the same way as we did the introduction video. So let's go for about 50mm sphere, something like that, and we'll click on the front, and I'm going to create a sketch, and I'm going to create basically a robot face. Very simple one. So I'm going to create a sketch, and we're going to place it along on the base planes. So we're going to place it along the XY plane. We're looking at front there. Let's place it along the XZ plane. There we go. Okay, that, and we'll sketch a face on here. When I say face, basically a very simple robotic face. Doesn't have to be too complicated. I'm going to use the polyline, this one here, and I'm going to create something very simple. So something like this, coming down and going across here, going up. I should have used the symmetry for this, but we'll carry on. And coming across and linking up here. Hit escape, and we'll keep these two in symmetry with this line, and the same for these two. So I'm clicking one, then clicking the other, and putting them in symmetry. We've got redundant constraints, so let's click on that and hit delete. And we'll do the same with this one, these 2 points, and this one, symmetry, and last of all, this one, and this line, and make that symmetrical as well. And click on the redundant constraint and delete. And let's position this so it's not outside the circle, it's just inside. Something like that. Let's bring this down a bit, and bring this in, and we'll add very simple slots for eyes. Something about here. Come down and just make something like this. Got that there. Let's hit escape to get the mouse pointer back, highlight that, and click this line, sketch tools, and we'll make symmetry across that line like so. And finally, let's just place a very simple mouth in here, so using the polyline again, and we'll create something like to there, and back again like so. Something like that. Hit escape again, and we'll just make those two symmetrical as well. And that line. Symmetry across there, click the redundant constraint and delete them. So what we got is a sketch that's right in the center of that circle. You can see that there. I'm going to click on the sketch, which is already selected, and come over to the part workbench, and we're going to use a extrude against that. We're going to create a symmetrical extrude. So let's bring this across, use the symmetry, and we're going to go around about, well, this is 500, so I'm going to say 75 because I want it coming out the sides a bit further. Let's go 100. There we go, so that's there. What we're now going to do is take both of those objects, so the sphere and control click the extrude so they're selected. Come up to the part, boolean, and we'll go intersection. So we've got that there. And the next thing I'm going to do is come over to the draft workbench, and I'm going to take this face and use the drafting tools and a face binder, extract out that face. Let's hide the common now, so this one here. We've got a face, come back to the part workbench, and let's add a thickness to that face, so using the 3D offset or part. We've got 2D offset there, 3D offset. Bring this around and add a bit of thickness. So we're making a very rough, basically faceplate. Something quite quick like that. That's okay that. Now we've got this, we've got the offset. If we come into the offset, we need to hide the face binder because that's going to be sitting in there. Now I've got this, what I want to do is export this out as a mesh so we can use it in Blender. I'm going to first come over to the draft workbench and get rid of this grid because we don't want this grid anymore. And we can use the gridding down here, toggle grid on off. So we've got that there. Just going to quickly save that. And the good thing about this, if we want to make some amendments, we can come in to the common, come into the extrude, come into the sketch, and I may want to adjust some of these, so I may want this coming inwards, and we can quickly do that by adding a line, say coming from here to here, just to make some quick amendments, like so. And we'll use the trim tool and just trim out that edge. And this one more, this one here, and just fix the symmetry because we got these 2 points, this one and this line. Make it symmetrical and do the same with these. And hit close. What will happen is that will readjust and we've got something like this. So now we've got our model, our offset, and our face binder is hidden. We're going to use the mesh workbench to create a mesh from this object. Let's come over to the mesh design workbench. And we're now in the mesh design, and we're going to be using this one here, create mesh from shape. But first we need to select the shape. So select the offset, cut to meshes, and create mesh from shape. Now we've got a number of outputs here. I tend to use the NetGen. We have a fineness option here, which allows us to go to coarse, fine, very fine, etc. We also got this quad dominated here. Now, if you have a mesh that doesn't look quite right when you export it out, then this can actually get you around problems with that mesh by adding more quad features in there, so more quad faces. Let's see what happens when we use this without the quad dominated. It will probably look absolutely fine, but we've always got this option in here if we're not happy with those faces. So I'm going for a fineness of moderate, and also I'm going to make sure that the draw style is on flat lines. We'll be able to see the tessellation. Let's hit OK. You can see the information that's been added to that model. So we've got this offset meshed. Let's click on this offset and press the space bar. And we've got a nice even distribution of faces there. We can't actually select the faces, we're still selecting this as one. And you can see how they distribute there. So this is the kind of thing that we need for Blender. If we have parts of the model where you see almost like triangles that come right out like so, then that's when you'd actually use the offset and come up to meshes, create mesh from shape, and then cut to net gen and use this quad dominated here. I'm happy with this, so I'm now going to export this out. So click on the offset, go up to File, Export, and I'm just going to export this out as a standard STL. So faceplate, offset, mesh.stl, and hit save. Now that's exported, we can go over to Blender. So we're now in Blender, and we don't need this cube, so I'm going to click on cube and hit delete. And we don't need the camera, hit the delete, and also really don't need the lighting, so let's get rid of that as well. That's import our STL file. So file, import, bring in the STL file. It's in downloads, I believe, and if I look down, I should be able to find the faceplate and bring that in. So we've got that faceplate there, and we'll bring this around and have a look at it. So we've got that there. I'm going to first add some more information to this. So to do that, I'm going to come over to the modifier and I'm going to increase the information in the model so the displacement map can be applied to this. Now this will smooth everything out. So we're going to go to the add modifier and we'll come down to the subdivision surface. So this splits the faces into smaller faces, and we can see we've got some smoothing around there. We've got simple, like so, and we can increase that amount. So I've just brought the levels up to 6. Let's bring it back down to about 4, and we'll play with that in a moment. The next thing we're going to add is from the same tab, add modifier, and we want the displace. This is going to be the physical texture we're adding to this, not a visual texture, it's a physical texture. That's come down and we can see that the modifier has been added. We could get these icons here, which is displacement, and click new and use the icon at the end to jump into the texture tab. We scroll down, we get this new here and open. We need open, and I've already downloaded the texture which I used in the previous video, and we'll look at downloads, and in here we'll find the mesh texture. That's added the mesh texture to that model, but it doesn't look right at the moment. We've just got a load of dots in there. So let's solve that. To do that, we need a UV map. So come up to the object mode and come to edit mode. That means our faces here we can select. At the moment everything's selected, which is fine. I want to add this to the whole model. Everything's selected, I haven't touched anything, which is fine. Come up to UV and we'll create a smart UV project, and we'll just take the defaults. Okay, that's created now. That's come over to the UV editing. You can see I haven't unselected anything, and we can see the whole object has been UV unwrapped, and we've got all the faces selected, which is good. Let's come over to the modeling now and bring this down to object mode. Now we can see that the texture has been applied, but it hasn't been applied properly, and that's where that UV comes in. We've actually going to arrange that texture so it fits that model exactly. We've UV unwrapped it, so we can do that by coming down to the coordinates and then dropping down to this UV, and you see straight away it changes. So this has changed now. So if we bring this around to this side, you can see what's happened. We've got that there. That's added that nicely to that. If the texture is too big, what we can do is come into the texture tab, this one here, texture properties, and come down to something called mapping, and we've got repeats here along the X and Y. And if we increase these repeats, you can see the texture is increasing as well. And so we can get whatever effect we like here by increasing these repeats. Also remember that on the displacement, this one here, the displace, well, first of all, we can come into the actual modifier itself, and we can come down to the strength. So this strength we can adjust to whatever we see fit. So minus there, and we can move up, and you can see it being changed. So we can get less as we get near to 0, and we can go for something like that. Actually in minus figures here, so let's bring this out. So you can see it's virtually disappearing there, and now it's reappearing, and we can make that definition more or less. You see that we've got some artifacts in here. This is just the JPEG that I got. It's a very low quality JPEG. You can use a higher quality there, and we can add the texture that we want in there. We also got the mid levels, so we can change these as well, bring these up and bring these down. So that's 1. It's not really doing anything. If I was on this subdivision algorithm, so I'm in the subdivision here, this algorithm, then that may change. And we may be able to get rid of some of the levels in here. Let's bring the levels back up. I think 4's doing fine here. And we can just juggle these to get the effect that we want. So there you go. So that's added that to the STL file. Let's say that we wanted to add it only to part of the STL file. Well, let's get rid of the modifier for the displacement. And now I'm going to go into edit mode. And I'm going to pick a number of vertices in here. At the moment, I'm on the vertex select here. So I'm selecting vertices. I'm going to come over to the face. So face select, and that's select just part of this. And we've got the selection tools in here, so I can go circle select, lasso select, etc. And we can select, well, let's hit escape first and unselect everything. That'd be a good idea. And select circle select, and we'll select just part of this face. So I'm going to come up and around like so. Say that. Now we can save those vertices or those faces. It's actually vertices. Let's hit escape to get the mouse pointer back and come into vertex, and we create a group from this. So vertex group, and assign to new group. That group we can add to displacement. So I know I've actually removed the displacement. We need to add it again, and let's make sure we're in object mode. Add modifier, looking for deform, displace, and again new, click on the end. Come into the textures, open the texture as we did before, downloads, and then select the texture that we want, the mesh texture there, and open that. Again, we need to use UV, so we come into the edit mode, and we've got those vertices still selected there. So we could UV against that, come up to UV, Smart UV project, or we could do the whole lot. And let's check on our UV editing, and we've got that there. We just want those. That means if we come back to the modeling, that we've just got those selected. Let's come into object mode. So UV to unwrap those. Now we've still got displacement added to the whole model. Let's come into the modifiers. Look at the displace, look at the coordinates, click that to UV. You can see we've got some problems here because we've added it to just those vertices there, or those faces there. So we've got the group saved. So we saved off that group. Let's click on the vertex and select the group. And we've just added it to that group. And we've got control over that as usual. We can change the strength and decide how that's going to look. That's quite nice. And also we can come down to the texture properties, that texture tab, and increase the repeats. So I'm increasing those repeats on that side. And you may have to swap in and out between the strength to get the desired effect you want. So let's bring this to 1. Hit enter. See, that's pulled that displacement map from those faces up and out. And we'll bring this down, say 0.2. And we can get what effect we want. So 0.5. I'm going to go for about 0.3. You can see those in there. Remember, the texture is quite low resolution. And we can increase the levels of information in there if we so desire to get a better effect. And that's basically how we take an STL file and add a custom texture to that for the displacement that we can 3D print, allow us to do more advanced knurling or more advanced texturing rather than trying to do that in FreeCAD, where we do get a parametric surface, but if we're adding this type of texture to it here, it's not really designed for that. So that kind of thing you do in a solid modeler such as Blender. Hope you found those two tutorials useful. We're mixing open source software there, FreeCAD as a parametric modeler, and Blender to do some finishing, ready to send that over to a 3D printer. And remember, we can just file, export as whatever form we want, STL, etc. And we can chuck that over to our 3D printer ready to print. So I hope you found that two-parter useful, and I hope to see you again soon.
If you like what you're seeing, please subscribe to the site. I also have a Ko-Fi or a coffee site that you can donate to if you so desire, and that's at ko-fi.com/MANG0. I also run a Patreon where you can subscribe and get extra content, and that's at www.patreon.com/MangoJellySolutions. Any money that's kindly donated will be used to expand the channel. Thanks a lot for watching and subscribing, and I'll see you again soon.